Hello everyone, welcome to another episode of the Magic Arena Run. Today we are going to be doing more Historic Brawl, but this time it's a bit of crowdsourced Historic Brawl. So if you don't know, we're having the 100 card Historic Brawl format. At the time of this recording, there's little more than a day left in the event. And I decided, you know what? I want to try a lot of decks as much as possible. So I basically asked everyone, what were the decks you were running? What were the matchups? And some of you guys treated these decks like they were your children. You guys treated them very well. You were so proud of them. You talked about them. You shared them. And I tried a lot of them. Some of them were okay, but they had very significant flaws. I talked about them. Some of them were really good though. And I decided, you know what? I'm gonna feature the three of the ones that I found very interesting. Very interesting and reasonable performers at that. Am I the perfect guy to pilot these decks? No, I actually made a lot of mistakes with the deck. But more often than not, the deck was able to save my butt more than one time. And what can I say? These decks deserve a spotlight because of that. So without further ado, we're going to go ahead with these deck lists, and I'll talk about them at the end of each episode. At the end of each section. So basically, I've had to record all these deck lists and record the gameplay. Then once I actually got permission from them, that's when I put it in. So without further ado, we're on to the first deck list. Okay, now we are starting up here with a submission by the 23 Real. This is his Simic. It's actually a very hard way to describe this one, but it's definitely super rampy, super fun. It centers around Nissa, Steward of Elements. Comes into play with X loyalty counters, so we have a lot of variables here in play. Primarily, it's about the plus 2 Scry 2 ability, because it's really about deck manipulation, setting up the deck, getting all our ducks in a row here. And we have plenty of good ducks here. But mentioned on the other abilities, there's the -6, untap up to 2 target lands you control. They become 5/5 elemental creatures with flying and haste until end of turn. That's pretty much like an emergency situation. The middle ability, there are times I've tried to play it, but for the most part, really that Scry 2, that's killer here. Now, as you can see, I'm going over all the different cards that help manipulate the top of our library. I say manipulates, but more like inform us. And yes, I'm going over that. This doesn't have like the complete explore package. It doesn't have the perfect ways of scrying. It has sufficient ways of scrying. It does have several highlight creatures here. So we're just going over those. We have quite a good amount of search as well. So let's see. We have quite a bit of the good stuff, but yeah, primarily it's Oracle of Moldiah and Vizier of the Menagerie. It's about getting extra land plays. That one's really powerful. I could see that maybe a version of this would have more cards like that, but being able to play creatures off the top, especially between Vizier and Vivian Monsters Advocate, so it gives us access to a lot more cards than we actually think we have here, and that kind of extra access is very important. I also mentioned that there's a little bit of a Neoform package here. We're probably going to be hovering over the Neoform shortly. Not quite. I'm still looking over all the different stuff. But there is a Neoform package. There is also a Prime Speaker Vanicar far here. You have to be very familiar with this deck. There's going to be one game or two where I make mistakes on manipulating that Prime Speaker Vanifer. But for the most part, it's a combination of getting our ramp going on, getting our haymakers going on, and our haymakers are mostly on the mid to late range. But it's really about getting lots of card advantage over time. We see a lot of cards. Even when the deck is running like 44 lands, we get so much access between them. And I also have to mention that 44 lands, it's something that we tend to be antsy about. Like, most people want to run like 36, 37. Some people try to shave more if they could, which it sounds reasonable. But realistically, you want to be running 40%, so that's like 40 out of 100. remember, 60%, 60 cards, 40%, that's 24. That's pretty much the standard we run. Here it's running like 44, but we go over through a lot of cards as a result. And we go over a few games here. We are, as I said, being very familiar with this deck is probably the most important thing. Like, I was talking over with the 23 Real about how he runs the deck. He's seen this video already in the most part. He's seen it raw and unedited. He has quite a few things to say about my gameplay style. Notably, how much I don't play Nissa too much. I guess you can say it's because I tend to be a bit gun shy about this. Most, like, for me, the worst thing that can happen to me is playing out my commander only for it to get blown out early. Now the more I think of it, in this matchup, it's a little bit of an unfounded fear. There are ways to hit planeswalkers in green, mostly by creatures, but for the most part, it's not very easy to hit. So actually, it would be really safe to play Nissa. And as you can see here, I end up I get one benefit from Oracle of Moldiah, but more likely than not, I probably should have played Nissa back then. It did help me ramp up to a quick Vivian, which does allow me to have an immediate blocker. Like, in this case, it's not about getting lots of early damage here. It's really about playing the long game. So that's why we notice cards like Lay Claim, which our opponent unfortunately knows of. So I think in this one, yeah, I pretty much had to give up on Vivian as well. So we gave up a few of our haymakers in value cards very early on, but for the most part, we are confident that we're going to be able to draw into the rest. And here we play the Lay Claim, take care of the Questing Beast, because that's pretty much the best thing our opponent has. And our opponent is starting to complain a bit. Basically does the snooze emoji, so we have a little bit of fun there. But yeah, you can't complain too much. I believe that there's a little bit of a quirk also with regards to the matchmaking feature, I would say. Now, there is some talk about Wizards doing the matchmaking here. They're basing it off power level. And I guess that might be a side effect of running close to half of our deck as lands. Especially if a lot of them are basic. For the most part, that means our power level, if the matchmaking system is using it by counting rares and mythics, it's super diluted. So we actually will tend to get paired up with lower more often than not. Now, that's not precisely true, because the 23 Real played his deck. He did run against Golos, he did run against Winota. So our opponent being salty about this one, kind of undeserved. It just so happens that this is Brawl. Sometimes we're the deck that gets our ducks in a row. Sometimes we're not. Okay, so a little bit of question mark there on that Kral's Temporal Summoning, but for the most part, we're able to pretty much punch out at that point. Now basically here's the part where it seems like I'm playing a lot of the advantage. Basically, for me, part of the appeal was going for the big Nissa. Now basically I have a bit of that. I have a bit of that extra buffer there. Now, however, our friend the 23 Real noted that he would have preferred if I played this a lot earlier. Looking back at this gameplay, actually, I'm thinking now, watching this again, yes, opponent snoozing it all. Yeah, let's have fun. But yeah, definitely I would have gotten a lot more advantage over time here. I probably would have thrown a few creatures under the bus. The Questing Beast would have been a bit more annoying, I think, in terms of the timing. I'm guessing in that situation I would have lost the Naga Vitalist instead of the Oracle. But all in all, I think I wouldn't say that this situation would have been too bad for us. Our opponent semi-tilting out. Okay, actually not true. Opponent did think this through. Actually, this is another case where my unfamiliarity with the deck kind of messed things up for me. So whether I was not paying attention or something, I forgot that it counts your loyalty counter. So I don't get to fire this off. Oops. And actually, I make several mistakes in this first game alone, which pretty much is another point I want to highlight, which is how important it is to be very familiar with the deck. Like, we can't just be randomly get... We can't just take someone else's Brawl deck and expect to be very good at it. There's a lot of nuance that you have to be very aware what the cards you have are available. Our opponent is somewhat deciding if they want to drop Toski or if they want to just run out the Vivian. They can't afford to do both here. But yeah, it's really about knowing how we want to play the deck through. Opponent goes for the Beanstalk Giant, and yeah, fortunately for us, we draw the Augmenter Pugilist, but we also decide to scry at the same time. Yeah, here scry is really powerful. It allows us to bin cards that are no longer pulling their weight at this point of the game. We actually get fortunate that our opponent does not hit enough lands. That Beanstalk Giant pretty much stays 7/7 for the most part. Our opponent does get their Vivian game on again. But we start taking advantage of all the extra explorers. But again, that's the key here. Take advantage of that scrying to the extra explorer. So we keep it that way, get the land off. We now know we have the Primal Command next, and yeah, at least here I'm familiar enough with the deck to know that there is a Crater Hoof Behemoth. That was pretty much what we were gunning for. Opponent drops the Scavenger Ooze. I believe our opponent gains a few life in the process here, but I also believe that they might have played the Toski as well. No, place the Turn Timber Symbiosis into a Battle Mammoth, so we actually give our opponent quite a few cards in the process here, but not too many. And yeah, this pretty much becomes the last turn of this particular game. I did mention here that I probably would have preferred to have an additional Crater Hoof like effect. I mentioned Maze and Forerunners, but just in case the Crater Hoof somehow becomes too irrelevant early on. Also, trying to search for it. I actually saw the Crater Hoof now, but trying to search for it back then, if you're really not familiar with Crater Hoof Behemoth. And also, I actually thought that I did not have enough mana to cast. I forgot one of the very first land I played was Castle Garenbrig. And there we go. Our opponent snoozes again because, yeah, they're just very salty about that. But we managed to punch out of that match, and in spectacular fashion. I guess I felt really happy playing through this one, especially with our opponent doing the sleep emoji, cry your tears of salt and whatnot. But I did go over the deck again just to recheck some of the other packages. I do mention that there is a small mutate package. That Parcel Beast I highlighted a bit because it's going to be relevant in a much later game. I also note that we probably don't have like all the greatest hits here, but we do have enough of the really good ones. I can see a way that this deck could become a lot more powerful, but does it have to? Now we look over this one. I double check. Yes, it's the mono red Neheb, so we're facing off against a mono red deck. Neheb is a very interesting choice of commander, so maybe that's why I hesitated in taking the free mulligan. Generally, in this kind of matchup, you'd want to go a lot faster, but we did have a Narnam Renegade as an emergency out. Turns out our opponent was more of a big red deck rather than the super fast deck. That Cleansing Wildfire was supposed to be a highlight as well. So we managed to... We played the Heart of Kiran first. This time we played the Nissa very early, because at the very least we get to play it both on offense and defense. In which case I didn't attack quite yet because I was concerned that there might be an extra burn spell. Like the last thing I want to do is get our Nissa stomped. So, and our opponent just dilly-dallies back and forth a little bit. I was also concerned about artifact removal, but here we go. here we take very good advantage of all the ramp and stuff. So we hit 2 cards that we really like. Now that Cavalier of Thorns, this one's gonna actually semi-wreck my day a little bit. It's not too bad. But basically this is where part of my unfamiliarity with the deck comes back to bite me. So but at the same time, our opponent is really taking their time. Now this is literally the first creature they drop. They would have taken my command tower, but yes, now, yeah, the unfamiliarity is kind of ruining it. Now I do, and in fact, I probably was better off playing the Tati. Actually, I made another mistake there. I forgot to play Tatiova first, if that was in consideration. Maybe in my mind, I wasn't really considering playing that. I kind of, it was a light offer on the trade. Opponent doesn't know if I have any other creatures per se. Then we go for the Neoform combo, and this is where we goof up. We basically give up a creature, we draw it into our only other 5-drop, and we are forced to play Narnam Renegade. Thankfully, we do get the Revolt trigger. What surprises me even more is the fact that our opponent has barely done anything beyond this point. And in fact, our opponent concedes right there. I guess the concept of big red, you really need to have a lot of small red to support it. And yeah, this is where I go take a look over. Let's refamiliarize ourselves. If we're going to be running Neoform Vanifar, we really need to pay attention. And that's when I realized, oops, both of my 5-drops were already in hand as a result. And it's pretty much, I have to keep in mind, it's literally going to just be 2, 3, 4 for the most part. There might be a chance to hit the 5, but it's really going to be 2, 3, 4. That said, I did make a mistake that the only top end was Crater Hoof. There was also an Agent of Treachery there. But for now, we do get our semi-fast start. I was already considering running the Parcel Beast, but, well, we hit the Lotus Cobra. And the worst case scenario, our opponent snipes the Lotus Cobra, which they promptly do. Actually, this might be the only removal our opponents ever played. I might be wrong. But here we now set up another card draw engine. Basically, one, it's get Jaspera Sentinel out of burn range. Our opponent already demonstrated that they're willing to run burn, and I decided we run with the card draw package here. The 23 Reels said that he would have preferred to play Nissa a lot earlier. I believe he would have played it immediately, never mind with the Jaspera Sentinel, but I think for me in that case, I had it in mind that I know I was going to have 1 mana up for the most part, so I was always going to be able to draw cards. In this case, I did not hit land, but I did get a lot of card draw, and with Joyra now on the field and our opponent clearly having an artifact package, they were running with it. So I actually go with Heart of Kiran here because, again, probably Nissa would have been the better play, but I think I was considering Heart of Kiran because I was more concerned that our opponent might have a burn spell at that time. But instead what happened was our opponent decided to go for the engine. In fact, I was really concerned that we're going to lose the Oracle of Moldai at some point, but instead it looks like our opponent was playing with themselves with an engine. Now, my overall comment on Brawl is that yes, you want to have a very good engine to run, but part of it is also about interacting with your opponent. If you're not able to interact with your opponent, you might be running into trouble. Now, I chose to play Vizier here because I wanted to get the Inquisitive Puppet off. I was hoping for another land off the top. I did not get that, but I did get an Entrancing Melody, and yeah, because of Oracle of Moldaya, our opponent knows that too. But we figured at this point we might as well just play everything out. One card that kept coming to mind is that our opponent might have an Ugin. And that would have really wrecked us, especially our opponent's able to actually get a ton of Topters at this point. But so, But in this game, that fear never really materialized, so I was somewhat thankful for that. Yeah, this was a case where I would eventually play Nissa here. That, don't get me wrong. Now, this matchup's also not very indicative of the possible matchups you might face. Like, we did not hit a super powered Brawl deck on the opposing side of the board, but the 23 Real did. He's actually shown me several screenshots taking out Golos, taking out Winota. Actually, I'm gonna take a look. He did take out others as well. We kept the Neoform engine there because we still had good hits, and a lot of our creatures they get to do their stuff, but being able to roll it even more. Yes. Oh, he took out Ashiok Nightmare Muse, a Bolas Planeswalker, and yeah, two versions of the Bolas deck. Wow. So look, so definitely this deck is technically classified as high power, which does make that first matchup with Vivian, I wouldn't say slightly questionable. Our opponent did run several creatures. I guess it might have been an issue with what was running up. Now our opponent playing Niv Mizzet concerned me because I was thinking, yeah, we're going to finally lose Oracle of Moldaya. And I was really reliant on that one. That was a super mana engine. But here in this case, we do get our Neoform. Yeah, I believe what happened was I just played the Caryatid as the. What I did was I played the Caryatid as fodder here. I definitely knew what I wanted to get. I at least paid attention to the deck enough to know that there was a Reclamation Sage. Oh, I went for the 5-drop. I believe. Yeah, we went for Tatyova here because despite the amount of card advantage we were getting, I kind of wanted more. Oh no, we went for Cav. Yeah, that was a. Yeah, we went for Cav because that would have blocked the Niv Mizzet. That was a big concern. I believe we eventually topped into the Rex Sage. Yeah, see, all that mana and we were able to use most of it. So we sniped the Mystic Forge because that was their version of what we were doing. Yeah, we definitely want to destroy that. And yeah, definitely did not need an Arboreal Grazer at that point anymore. So yeah, definitely did not want the Quandrix Campus. The Diviner is actually fine. And yeah, we did see the Tatyova out top. So I definitely kept that on top. In fact, I definitely just cast it right there. Basically, the other plan I had was because we have a Niv Mizzet that's about to machine gun everything. I wanted to put as many questionable targets per se, or basically targets that did not seem super relevant. So like I put out the Llanowar Elves. I was hoping that it would if our opponent managed to go off, it would hit something. Actually, this is where it turned out that our opponent kind of was running a bunch of super powered historic cards, but I'm pretty sure there were instants and sorceries in our opponent's deck. Maybe our opponent just went for the engine a bit more. So yeah, our opponent was gunning the stuff that already served their purpose. Gun the Rex Sage, gun the Llanowar Elves did a fine job as cannon fodder. Opponent also getting their own getting their own set of multiple planeswalkers. In fact, I think this one's kind of rivaling ours. At this point, I figured that eventually Niv Mizzet's gonna gun everything down. So I had only one play left at this point. It was pretty much Crater Hoof Behemoth or bust. Okay. And so we started digging through lands. We had a lot of lands to dig through. But yeah, we took advantage of that. I considered playing the Echoing Equation half, but changing everything into a 5/6 but without trample, I would have punched through most of their board, but not sufficiently enough. So we did a mutate. Yeah, let's mutate the smallest one. So while I was doing this, I was also mentally counting how much mana I had left. see if I could afford to cast stuff. So yeah, I was doing a lot of mental mathematics. I figured I have to activate the Castle Garenbrig now. Get the Branch Walker off. That gives us a free explore. Takes that land off the top. There's another land. So I figured scry 2. Let's see if we can hit. We hit the Crater Hoof Behemoth. We definitely have enough mana. And yeah, our opponent good games right there. And actually, I was gonna see how much damage was I gonna deal. Our opponent figured they're not gonna bother blocking, and let's just hit them for down to 197. That was a really fun one. So yeah, I had quite a lot of fun with this deck. Actually, the 23 reel has an updated version of the deck list. I'm gonna post that on the description, and he does talk through a few of the things that he's changed. He's added additional cards like Nissa's Triumph. He's considered, I think he also considered adding, no, he hasn't really added that much, but his deck list is definitely a lot more different. But anyway, that's enough for this one. We're going to go over to our next deck shortly, so take care. And ladies and gentlemen, here we are taking a look at another Brawl deck. This one is brought to you by Stephen Keay. He's actually a wonderful moderator all around. I see him in several of the forums. Very nice guy altogether. He submitted this how do I say this? At first it looks like just a pile of legendaries all surrounding Kethis. So Kethis' shtick here is that good legendary, makes your legendary spells cost 1 less, and you get to exile 2 legendary cards from your graveyard to cast the rest in your graveyard. To cast the rest in your yard, you still have to pay for them. But the idea here is that you want to get a lot of incremental value over time. So you're getting a lot of early value. With your legendaries. You have a sequence played out in your mind. You play them out. Your opponent gets to answer a few of them. Over time, you're able to buy them back. Actually, there are a lot of sub-teams that are around here. Now, this deck is actually curve related, though it does top out really heavy. Stephen mentioned that sometimes you will get hands where like it's all 4s, 5s, and 6s and whatnot. So it can get very scary at times. But there is a reanimation package, so that's also something to consider. We have quite a good number of cards that reanimate, and quite a few planeswalkers as well, so we get a lot of value over time. Basically, it's a big value engine. My only concern here is that the mana costs are so greedy. Like you noticed a while ago, I pulled out the Cavalier of Dusk. There's also the White Cavalier as well. Imagine if I had to run the Green Cavalier. Which is another thing. This deck is centered around white-black. The green is there as a plus. I actually would have thought that this kind of deck would be green centered. It would be somewhat ramp heavy, but otherwise the deck building is somewhat solid, if not just a bit on the top end heavy. It has a solid 40 lands, has a very decent mana distribution. My only gripe is basically the Cavaliers. Has some early ramp, has some good packages, but for the most part, the creatures are very good quality. My other concern is that it could use a little more removal, or at least it could use better value creatures, and that is a concern I bring up when we get into later games. But here we get our first match. It's actually a very interesting one. I was so sure we were going to lose this first match here. It's a match against Tezzeret. So we kept this hand very slow off the start. The only reason I really considered keeping it was the Mindstone and the Rex Sage. The Elder spell also helped, especially when you know that your opponent's commander is a planeswalker, so something to consider. I somehow could have kept that land, but I decided to bin that one early. Unfortunately, because we were on the draw, our opponent managed to get on a Padim early, so I was super concerned. I was never going to destroy anything. My gamble did not pay off. So I decided to go plan B. I went with the Mind Stone first in case I could in case I could cycle into a better plan. I could have easily gone for the Gideon, but I was concerned our opponent was going to be running a lot of removal. So as it is, opponent starts dinging us with Tezzeret and even gets a shot in with Padim. We do get some. I considered Isret, but I figured let's go Gideon. Let's go for the Elder Spell, get the value out of that. So we get a nice beefy Gideon to go with this. We give ourselves the emblem, though, because yeah, that's the only thing we could literally do at this point. My main concern was that we were going to run into a deck that has actual interaction, actual removal. So opponent goes Weir of Invention, going for the Mystic Forge. So at this point we were just yeah, we're gonna just beat face for a while. But I knew that we were in serious trouble if we cannot deal with these artifacts. So the Iseret is there just to buy us some extra time. Basically, play interference for as much as we can. And our opponent manages to get the mana to, yeah, cast Tezzeret again. Opponent mill stuff actually snipes us a bit, but now we actually get an interesting play here. Because of the Isret and the Gideon, we go for the Planeswalker. We figure at best we take out the Planeswalker, but no, we get to take out Padim. And because of that, we actually managed to start taking out their value. We take out their Mystic Forge. We take out one of their Signets. So that was a very good hit there. Actually, it snowballs for our opponent at that point. Our opponent manages to snipe Iseret, and even threatens us with the Ratchet Bomb as well. In fact, it's really scary. Everything that's of note is has 3 mana value. And our opponent's starting to tick up at that point. Now, fortunately for us, we did hit a Polukranos, so we managed to snipe Emery. We managed to start clearing out the Planeswalkers, but our time is running short unless we can answer that Ratchet Bomb. So that one's a good hit. I don't think we ever bothered to play Kethis at this point. Yeah, opponent goes God Pharaoh statue. Okay, so everything gets more expensive, so that everything for us gets more expensive, so that's a concern. Opponent starts taking up the Ratchet Bomb even closer. We had one more turn to figure out something. I could just play the Redain, but that's yet another 3 mana value card. So I went with Valkmira. It would mess up some of their targeting, at the very least. So we take out Tezzeret yet again. But now we have one more turn to answer that Ratchet Bomb. Our opponent's going to get it just the right number of counters. They even cast Tezzeret one more time. So it's looking very dire for us at this point. We're going to lose Gideon. We would have a Polukranos still. Opponent buys back the Mystic Forge. Unable attack. We hit Vraska Golgari Queen. So this pretty much emphasizes that the cards that we want have to be able to interact. They have to give us a lot of value. We snipe Tezzeret yet again. We bring our opponent down. Our opponent could get an engine going yet again, but we managed to take out this player. Unfortunately, the next 2 games are not so lucky. I start noticing that we're looking for cards that generate value, and I noticed that we might be at odds at this point a bit. It's looking very good. We have a lot of we have removal in the form of permanents. We got a lot of good stuff going, but that's when I noticed that we might be running the wrong commander for this job. So this is we're going up against a Muldrota deck. We take a mulligan early because we don't exactly have a plan to go. The hand with Arcane Signet is a lot better. We managed to get an early Drana to go with it, though I think I opted to go for Kethis here, especially with the Sun Petal Grove, because we need to be able to drop Kaya early. I considered sniping Azusa, but in this case, if our opponent had all the lands, they would have played all of them immediately. So I changed my mind. I see if I can trade for it on the cheap. No, opponent's still dangling it in front of us, but no, we decide to go Ghost Form, give ourselves a Mikaeus also. Now the opponent does take out Kaya. We do draw on. So we keep going for this, but our opponent does have a way to wipe our board here. But that said, I do notice that there is an yeah. So he has a way to wipe our board. He hits the Languish. We decide to save Kethis. And now this is where a key decision comes to mind. I have to decide between buying back Kaya and replaying my stuff again. In this case, I choose to buy back Kaya, and I think this ended up becoming a very big issue for us. Now, I opted not to destroy Binding of the Gods. That also turned out to be a mistake, because when our opponent hits Muldrota and hits a lot of mana, they start replaying stuff again. Now, at first, I feel vindicated because our opponent plays an Ashiok. But we've pretty much cleared out our entire graveyard at that point. However, we don't exactly draw anything relevant at this point. We have an Omen of the Dead that is really stranded. I also probably could have held back here, so our opponent just starts milling their yard, getting. They also drop a Mending of the Dominaria, which I pretty much was forced to snipe at some point because and I just kept drawing land after land. I could. So one option I had was to play Cab, snipe the Caryatid, but I was hoping that I would be able to do that to snipe their Muldrota. However, it came to a point where probably way too late to do that. Opponent takes out even more of our cards, so it's kind of unfortunate that we had the build that that benefits from having cards in the yard, but our opponent happens to have the build that is good at taking out cards in their yard. So this game actually gets long and drawn out here, but it gets to a point where I'm really unable to do anything good. I guess I can attribute it to several mess ups here. I do get very close with the Elspeth and all that, but yeah, I noticed that the Dominaria gonna put a lot of lands into our opponent into the battlefield for our opponent. Once our opponent gets that, it's a big issue. Though it's still too late for us. Our opponent manages to get through it anyway. So we end up trading Kethis, but and we let it come back here. I actually opt to cast that, then cast Elspeth. Basically, hope to go Flyers. And we were actually very close. Our opponent was down to like 12. We just needed a few good hits. Opponent goes Elspeth's Nightmare to take out one of our Flyers, which unfortunately we really needed more of. And the Cultivate pretty much actually, the bigger concern I was looking at is, yeah, we're about to lose the Bond of Revival. Opponent gums up the board even more. I do get to snipe something, but probably made the miss. I probably should have held on to that even longer. I was thinking, and I basically played that situation. The correct play for me was to actually just play the Fire Action Scriptures immediately. I was trying to put more pressure by taking out their mana sources, but the writing was kind of on the wall at that point. Also tried to hold up Omen in case our opponent manages to take out something like, say, our Cavalier. But actually, I was hoping to dangle it in front. Our opponent takes the Bond of Revival, which is probably correct. No, actually, it's not probably correct. It was definitely correct. So as you notice, the way I'm talking, we lost this game, but the more I'm looking into this, it's actually looking more like the losses are due to player error. But I can say that there are some contributing factors, like the mana is a big contributing factor. Opponent has a Ravenous Chupacabra, so that snipes yet that makes it even harder for us to win. Opponent replays the Mara Triton, and that's when the engine becomes unresolvable for us. We eventually concede this point. Elder Spell was perfect the first match, but it was not so great the second match. So I opted to swing with Cav. I probably could. Yeah, Muldrota being a 6/6 is a big issue also. So I played the Phyrexian Scriptures, but at this point it's way too late. The correct play would have been to... The correct play would have probably been to play it a lot earlier, cleared the board out even more. Now our opponent is just buying back creature again and again. Having a way to nuke the graveyard would be great. That's why it works for our opponent. Because of their colors, they're able to run Ashiok. That's a good way to clear stuff. It doesn't work for us. Actually, we do have a way to clear stuff out, but we need to have that as an option. So yeah, Rest in Peace would be a very good one. It messes our Kethis, but sometimes we might not have a choice. We just play Kethis as a mana rock for our legendaries, and that would be a much better plan. Somehow I managed to... Yeah, I just buy back the Kethis, and I played the Omen of the Dead because we were struggling. We do get a lot of value creatures, but the thing is, a lot of our value creatures are not legendary. So they run at odds with... They run seriously at odds with... They run at odds with the deck concept. So we might as well just go up top. Actually, the more I think of it, the correct play there would have been not to make soldier tokens. We would have had more gas to deal extra damage. I think our opponent, but I'm pretty sure our opponent had a means to take out... Yeah, Elspeth's Nightmare again. Seals the deal on that one. The more I think about it, and yeah, as you can see, the writing is super on the wall at this point. No point. I thought about leaving Kethis there because we might have to buy back Elspeth, but it's pretty much grasping at straws. There are actual ways for me to deal direct damage. It's okay, not ways. It's more like ways, singular. There's an Oath of Kaya in the deck. That if I manage to dig into that, one card out of 100. I think we've dug through like 30 cards or so not that much. So we don't get to get that many hits in. Opponent actually just starts clearing out even more. So we managed to make this a very long game, but unnecessarily long one. And yeah, Field of the Dead. And Binding again. So yeah, we start losing all the Unfortunately, Valentin has Menace. It's just actually good early game, but not in the board that is this filled up. So okay, and all these creatures have Death Touch. I probably should not have traded the Tragtusk here, but at this point, I was really clutching at straws. Yeah, this one's a bit of a tough one here. So at this rate, yeah, our opponent is really going off. It's actually become a showcase of our opponent's deck rather than ours, but it does highlight some weaknesses that Kethis is good at buying advantage back over time, but it's not good at starting it. Now there are cards that we could add there, like look at all the cards that fill up the yard that worked on our opponent's side. That's actually a very good thing. That's something that we could add here. Our deck does have a mid-range slant to it, so that is a consideration. But yeah, we were about to lose our graveyard yet again. So basically, it's essentially a huge lock at this point. We managed to get a Questing Beast, but and it's pretty much our shot at it's the least we can do. We get to trade off Muldrota, but guess what? He has all the mana in the world to cast it again. So it wasn't super effective. Maybe if we had a way to give it trample as well. but we did not. Actually, there are cards that allow us to give it trample, but we just don't happen to have it. So that brings up another situation where, yeah, where sometimes the cards are on your favor, sometimes not. Opponent does not cycle the else doesn't cycle Elspeth anymore, but yeah, the Ancient of Treachery is there. At this point, I'm actually looking over the deck list to see if there's a way to deal direct damage out of the blue. I see the Otokaya, so I decide, you know what? I'll give myself one draw step. Let's see if we can draw into that. And nope, we hit an Issaret, but we're about to lose our board. We're not going to get much in the way of it. I could have bought even more time, but no, it was very hard at that point. And so this is the part where I go, yeah, where I go over the deck again. But so we take a look at all this. So we try to take a look at a lot of the pinpoint removal, again noting that there is a lack of graveyard hate. So that's probably something we could consider. It's also sad that Kethis only functions with legendaries. It doesn't function with historic, which would have been a great thing, considering we do run quite a few sagas ourselves. I opt to keep this one. Yarok could be fast, but I figured that there is a chance we could be faster between Valentin and Garruk. I do also note that our mana is super awkward here. Also, a while ago you saw the matchup with the Black Cavalier. Now you see my matchup with the White Cavalier. Now, I'm actually deciding... I played the Paradise Druid because I'm concerned our opponent might just have spot removal. Again, something that's always that's always a big concern, especially if your opponent's playing black. Unless you have a way to protect your stuff, we're in trouble. Well, our opponent plays Dark Ritual, so we were already in trouble to begin with. We're missing the white mana, so we are not able to... So we're not able to punch through. I did consider playing Garruk just to... Yeah, I considered playing Garruk just to start getting early damage in, but I figured, you know what, at this point, I need to start making a blocker first. Let's see what we can get out of that. Actually, I end up just trading the token, so in retrospect, I was probably better off just pumping Garruk. But yeah, pumping with Garruk. Our opponent would gain life anyway, but Garruk would end up with the same number of loyalty counters at that point. So the Doom Necromancer I did not bother playing out because we have no cards in the yard. We don't have that kind of an... It's so Stephen designed the deck in a sense to naturally accrue the benefit over time. Opponent manages to kick it, and so therefore gets big stuff. We actually do benefit from Toski. So I considered swinging with this one. I also swing with the tokens. We need to start drawing cards. So Toski was a very big highlight here. But you can see the one issue we're having is that we're getting a lot of cards, but we're not getting enough lands through. Our opponent is getting a lot of cards, but they have the ways to cast their stuff. So even though the deck is running 40 lands, we probably need more ways of ramping. There is a cultivate here, but note the value our opponent's running. The Llanowar Visionary helps. They have access to Risen Reef. We don't quite have that same access. The Night of Autumn is something I was considering because even if it's just for the Arcane Signet, but it does feel kind of weak at this situation. It was a lot better in the other matchup. Now here you can see that we're having issues with our opponent now running away with it. In fact, they now have a Yarok that I can't just swing with Valentin anymore. So my plan now is pretty much swing with Toski. Well, it's no choice. I have to swing with Toski anyway. So the removal kind of saves us a bit here. I could have opted for Sigrid, but it would have been the same. It would have kind of been the same thing. We actually decide, you know what? Let's make the pest token as well. Then because everything's a 2/2, I swing with everything. I swing with Valentin. Force the trade there. Again, we draw more cards, but again, just so unfortunate that we don't draw enough lands out of the setup. We do get a shot at Liliana, but the board is becoming scarier and scarier. Actually, at this point, I was still feeling somewhat confident, but our opponent has a big surprise for us in the next turn. So again, opponent really firing off at all these ETB triggers. That's actually something to consider here. We don't have as many ETB triggers as other decks do, so we might want to consider cards that kind of shut it off. We might want to consider running Hushbringer and Strict Proctor as ways to slow it down. There's Takali Honor Guard that also slows them down as well. Opponent is on the tank, but yeah, Primal Command, very good. If I want to cast Garruk again and digs for the Massacre Worm, which I know is gonna kill our entire board, I considered casting Garruk, but at this point I opted to just cast Liliana because I need to start paring their board down at least at the same time. We also get to draw cards this way. But again, the lands are not helping us. So this is where we end up throwing in the towel at this point. Our opponent also happens to have the Agent of Treachery. Our opponent actually goes for the other stuff. They go for Liliana, they go for a land. The Massacre Worm gets a double trigger, so we don't even get so Trostani doesn't even matter. And yeah, my board gets so cleared out that it's and also double Uro. Yeah, basically our opponent is firing at all cylinders. We're down to like only 5 mana to do anything and no board wipe. If we had the board wipe in hand, I might have considered it, but we just gave our opponent a Liliana. And we never even got the chance to cast Cavalier at this position. So that's pretty much a good game. We throw in the towel there. So that said, off screen I played a few games before that. In fact, I played some games to see if I wanted to consider this deck, and I actually considered it because I didn't win every game I played in testing, but I did win a good number of them. But generally, the more games you play, you start seeing more of the flaws come online, and at this point, this is when some of the flaws started to shine. Like, this really plays like a control deck. So we can't exactly be playing this as a mid-range value deck. I actually likened it to the Spirit Monger deck with Pernicious Deed, but we don't have even any of those here. So that's something to consider. I am going to show the deck list here, but take it as a main template. Try to see what other things you can add to shore it up. I definitely do recommend giving it a try. See what else you can add there. And we're going to go on to our next deck, so stay tuned. Now, ladies and gentlemen, here we are with the final deck list. This one is courtesy of Paul Bileci. I hope I'm pronouncing your name correctly. Bileci. I think it's more likely Bileci. And apologies if I goof it up. If you want something easier, he's also known as Jace Unleashed on YouTube. So what we have here is his submission. It's actually very simple and straightforward, but there is a lot of thought that was put into this. So this is a straightforward Lyra Dawnbringer deck, so it's not much to say about her. 5 mana, 5/5, flying, first strike, lifelink. Other angels you control get +1/+1 and has lifelink. So the deck is super angel centric here. In fact, when I go over this one, about 2/3 of the deck, 2/3 of the creatures are angels. Now I noted that the land count is a little bit lower, but I'm actually mistaken in that one. Because it doesn't count the MDFC, so we're actually closer to about 38 lands, which is actually still quite good. And also when you consider that the deck is not functioning like a curve out deck, this one's really more in line with control into angels. So actually there seems to be 2 ways about it. There is there's an early game plan option available. We do have a lot of angels that come into play early. We have a control package into mid range. We have quite a bit of removal as well into hitting our angels later. We don't exactly have ramp, but we have a lot of options here, and a lot of the creatures are very good in that line. I also note Jumpstart Special. Herald's Horn actually does very good as a mana rock as well. And we have we also have what's that called? Dawn of Hope and Smothering Tide. Yeah, we also have those cards to give us extra card draw. We do gain quite a bit of life over time. In fact, that's going to be very relevant in this first match we go through. It was so close. I actually thought that it was going to be over for us at that point. So our first opponent is Kethis, God of Destiny, and it kind of scares us a bit here, but I figured, you know what, if we're not putting stuff in the yard, we're not exactly giving their Kethis anything to do. So I opt to just keep it simple. Foretell the Glorious Protector. That Glorious Protector is actually so glorious, I'm not kidding. So our opponent goes for Kazandu Mammoth to have an early plan. In fact, I have the option of say dropping Glorious Protector, but Kazandu Mammoth grows, so we're probably not gonna block profitably with it. So we just take our early beats. Thankfully, it's only 5 damage. There's a Gem Razor, snipes the Herald's Horn, so much for that plan. Takes 6 damage. But actually at this point, our plan is pretty much, let's get our opponent to put some more creatures in the battlefield. Let's take advantage of that Fumigate. In fact, that brought back is going to be so relevant to us here. So right now what we're doing is we're just basically going land after land after land. We kind of have to take the damage for now because it's going to be so unprofitable if we end up just if we end up just throwing the Solemn Simulacrum this way. We have better things planned for this, so we keep holding. I know eventually our opponent's going to cast another creature, or we're going to be put in the point where it's just the right cost. So our opponent finally goes for the Gem Razor. So we Glorious Protector. We don't get to draw a card, but we do. But the plan here is pretty much get some more lands going. We do have a Lyra on board, and I do want to have it protected somehow. So we take few more beats. We get our Solemn back. We get our land back. In fact, the synergies are very cute at this point. Our opponent goes Waking the Trolls, so they're planning to finish off with a lot of cards. But this is where things get interesting. Brought back, it's any 2 permanents. So we bring back Glorious Protector. We take out the Behemoth. We figure this is probably the right time. Actually, we hit first. Why not? This is the right time to Fumigate. We could pump it, but nah, not worth it. In fact, the better plan was get a land yet again, get Righteous Valkyrie down, and at this point, our opponent has some. They probably could ramp to. They could probably ramp, but they don't hit the ramp. We end up just dropping Lyra, drop the Heraldic Banner. I hold the Kabira. Yeah, I just go for the Kabira take. Actually, no. Yeah, I was debating whether to fire it off. I said, you know what? Let's offer the trade. And sure enough, our opponent trades. We willingly let go of the Solemn Simulacrum. We keep the Kabira take down. I figured that it's probably going to be relevant later. And you have no idea how correct that instinct was. It was going to be so relevant later. Opponent finally gets down Kethis, but we're able to race our opponent at this point. Our opponent is looking for ways to put stuff down, but so far they're just ramping, so they're going to take a very big hit here. I do kind of... So I played the land. I figured let's pump up with Tyrite Sanctum while we're at it. So we get a 7-6. That pump is actually going to be super relevant in the next play here. Opponent goes Chaos Warp. So that's fine. We actually end up getting another land, so not too great. I think our opponent our opponent starts catching up, but we end up gaining a lot of life in the process. Opponent goes Beanstalk Giant. So we play Lyra Dawnbringer, can't attack with it, which turns out to be to our benefit here. So I pump it anyway because why not? It's not like I have anything to do. And this is where our opponent drops their big bombshell. So opponent's waiting. The opponent dings us a bit. Takes our glorious protector. They drop Fiery Emancipation, so they have a live Clothis and the Beanstalk Giant's about to kill us. So we block with Lyra. Finally, the Kabira takedown comes in. Thank you, First Strike. And we pump up, but we go back down. But it's now become a very big race. So at this point, I figured, yeah, actually what I should have done is consider to see if I could keep pumping Lyra. But I figured the threat of losing Lyra is so bad for us that we have to make it indestructible. And so we managed to keep gaining out of our opponent's reach. Thankfully, the life gain of Clothis does not scale with the damage dealt, so they're only gaining 2 even though they're dealing 6 to us. So we get hit for another 12. And we finally get on an Ajani Strength of the Pride, which actually is... So yeah, we were thinking about, do we gain life? Is it enough to bring us up? No, not enough. Let's just make a creature. That creature becomes super relevant here. So we get our opponent down to 1. That's why I was trying to do the math as much as possible. Now Sajiri Shelter to the rescue. Guess what our opponent's card is? They try to fire it off for the... They go for the Scorching Dragonfire. We name Sajiri Shelter. We name red. Opponent goes for the swing. The protection from red does double duty by blocking Clothis as well. Yeah, then that pretty much locks the game. So we get our quick win this way. This is probably gonna be the shortest of the 3 videos because the wins come out around a lot faster. The losses come faster as well though, so that's something to consider. But this might be your favorite style of deck. Now I did note that we were fortunate to have both of those cards. We probably could use more of this effect. I'm looking over, see if there are any other cards that do protection. There aren't any. A God's Willing probably would have been worth considering. Feat of Resistance might be a bit more expensive. We don't exactly have that much removal, but so here we end up with a hand that is more... Okay, so it's against Captains. Say this time we end up with a hand where we have to just run these out. Opponent plays Leafkin Druid. We get our early Sarah. We have a Sarah Angel on standby to go along with our Lyra. Opponent drops Captain Sisay. I start considering, well, I don't have the mana anyway, but I'm starting to consider if our opponent drops enough stuff, we will profitably hit Day of Judgment. Which actually brings a concern that, not more concern, but maybe we do want more Ratifex. Our opponent goes for a big Vorinclex. They definitely have the mana for it. They tutor up another... Yeah, they tutor up the Great Henge. So that actually benefits us because that Great Henge is going to be stranded for a while. We don't exactly hit off Herald's Horn, but it does set us up to have Swords of Plowshares as an emergency exit. I eventually end up using it. Opponent has an Overgrown Battlement. I consider it, but you know what? It's not a big deal. I probably want to hold it up for something that can actually hit back. We do hit an Elspeth Conquers Death, so that's also good news for us. We play the Sarah Angel, so we still have Swords to Plowshares back up. Opponent is looking over their mana. They have 6 mana. They go for the Elder Gargaroth. Yeah, that one is a very good Swords target because we need to be able to swing back. We hit an Angel of Grace, so that was a good hit. So Herald's Horn, very good. We finally go for the Lyra. I am taking a bit of risk here because we don't have the mana for Teferi's protection. Opponent does go for Lyra Dawnbringer instead, which helps us kind of a bit. We hit the Elspeth Conquers Death on Lyra. We start swinging up on the air, gaining tons of life along the way. And I think at this point, yeah, our opponent packs it. I think our opponent packs it in at this point. We are a rat away from getting wiped out, but our opponent just drops Linvala and all that. We hit yet another Angel, which And we also hit the Cleansing Nova. I was already considering, if I can just take out the enchantments, we lose the ECD that way, but you know what, that would have been fine. So those were two relatively quick matchups. This last match, unfortunately, we did not win this one, so bit of a spoiler alert, but let's talk over some of the issues we came around here. So opponent is playing Sarulf Realm Eater. So this is the third kind of hand that was available, so I'm actually glad with the 3 games we got. We got 3 different possible showings. I decided to give it a try. It's like the early aggro plan. In hindsight, when your opponent's playing Sarulf, he has a ton of spot removal. Probably the worst idea. So another thing that I think we made a mistake in was letting Sarulf stay around for quite a long time. So I go for the quick Angel of Vitality just to start getting damage in. In hindsight, the correct play was get Sarulf off the table, because our opponent's gonna have a lot more removal. It's gonna start beating us down here. So again, I played Lyra, though this one's definitely a mistake. If our opponent's just playing this kind of style deck, actually the commander should have been a very big clue that that everything's gonna be removed. And you know what? Our opponent 1-for-1s us. And the problem with that 1-for-1 is that our opponent is benefiting from it more than we are. So we're forced to go Prison Realm. Very poor timing at that. We do get a nice Shepherd of the Cosmos, but we wasted a lot of effort on that one. We probably could have done it sooner and maybe it would have convinced our opponent to snipe the Youthful Valkyrie, which is not such a bad idea. In fact, our opponent was smart. They left the Sarulf under the Prison Realm because they knew they had Trashing Brontodon. So our opponent, they get the Blizzard Brawl. Basically, Sarulf carries the entire game. And there's the Chupacabra to boot. And so we consider our options at this point. We're not, even if I get the mana for Lyra at this point, it's gonna be super late. But yeah, I figured go for the Bishop of Wings. Opponent just wipes the board. Opponent also, so basically our opponent, perfect deck for 1-for-1 removal. Actually, this is a very good lesson for one of the other decks. Something to consider. Sarulf definitely would be a great fit for that one. But it actually highlights that our opponent did a very good job in building their deck. If their opponent happened to be a 0 creature deck, it might be a concern, but our opponent's just riding this wave, and we pretty much had no way of coming back at that point. Opponent just played everything. I will note that we did goof up a bit on this next play here. So here we draw Teferi's Protection. So basically there is a little bit of confusion with reflexive triggers and all that. So opponent pumps it up. I have to decide if I play it now or to preserve the Naire's Binding or not. I chose not to. I thought that it would ask me if I give me an option. It does not. So instead, I just end up wiping this. But I would have had a chance to replay Naire's Binding. I don't bother gaining the life because we bin those planes. I could have used one plane for Lyra Dawnbringer, but everything is really bad for us at this point. We go down to 1 life. I'm surprised our opponent didn't hit the Tyrite Sanctum and just kill us right there. So we played the Lyra Dawnbringer, but you know what? It's kind of obvious our opponent had a way to kill it. And there you go, Casualties of War wiping it down. So that pretty much ended that game. But all in all, I was still very happy with this deck. So basically, that third form about trying to get early stuff, probably not a great idea. So I might probably start I would still keep the early Angels because they give us early drops, but I would definitely lean the deck more towards control into mid-range and higher. So that's probably how I would gun this one. But other than that, this is a very good one to run around. Definitely give this one a try. And so thank you very much for Paul Bileci for sharing this deck with us. And yeah, we're gonna go to the conclusion of this series. and let you know what my thoughts are on this entire thing. So thank you very much. And there you go. Those are videos of the three different deck lists. Actually, the 23 reels submitted another deck list as well. I unfortunately, because of time constraints, I still have to edit I still have to edit the video and show it off. Do check the description for his updated deck list. I've seen it on paper. I haven't had the time to test it, but it's definitely lit. Also, thank you to Stephen Keay and also thank you to Paul Paul Billet Paul Bileci, aka Jace Unleashed. So thank you very much for sharing your deck list with us. Basically, if anything, it solidifies my love for 100 card Historic Brawl. Wizards, let's please move with this format onward. I know it's just five life points away from Dual Commander, but as a historic format, it's very fun. I really enjoy it a lot. And yeah, if you guys enjoy it too, do share your support. Find your way to talk on social media. Mention that you love to see the 100 card Historic Brawl. Come back a lot more often. Even let's make it a permanent queue if we can. And maybe we can move this popularity on towards Standard Brawl. Though I'm a bit more skeptical about Standard Brawl with that one. But anyway, so three wonderful deck lists, three wonderful creators. Thank you so much. So that's it for this episode, the Magic Arena Run. If you like what you saw, please don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Turn on notifications and whatnot. And as always, wish you guys a great week. Take care. God bless. Stay safe wherever you are. Have a great day. Have a great day, everyone.